Welcome. This is Jay Larson with the Idaho Technology Council. And today, beautiful spring day, we get the opportunity to hear from Gordon Jones with Boise State University and the College of Innovation and Design. Gordon's been in Boise for the last 6 years with he and his family, and has been a very integral part on driving entrepreneurship and many other things. But as you know, the Idaho Technology Council is very focused on getting more entrepreneurship in Idaho and viewing that as a very defining opportunity for Idaho's innovative ecosystem. So, Gordon, welcome, and we're so glad you can join us today.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate being here, and thanks for all the work you're doing with ITC. And certainly see a lot of great work from ITC. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Gordon. You know, Gordon, I got to say this before people go on. Gordon is an exceptional tennis player. And this is important to note, and I'm waiting to get him on the court again. So that's all I can say at this point, Gordon. So tie those sneakers up.
They often ask you for what's something somebody doesn't know about you. So I guess you've given up my answer, Jay.
That's good.
The tennis career that never happened. So,
well, I put you in the McEnroe with respect to your playing, not the antics, but
minus the tantrums. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So. But you know, this is great. Hey, Gordon, one of the reasons I thought it would be great to have you on, and thanks so much for making time, is that you came from, by the way, did this city have to have the start with a B before you moved to it? You moved from Boston to Boise, and you were working with Harvard and what we call the I Labs, or the innovation labs there. You're running that as the director. And I know that I had the chance to meet you before you were just kind of a consultant that Bob Custer brought out to the city and to the university to look around. And then you decided to come and take this job and be the founder of the College of Innovation and Design at Boise State. Can you tell us just briefly about that, and then we can kind of move on so people have that background?
Yeah, sure. A little bit of my history, or sort of how I arrived here. I was in more recent part of my career, the last 10 years, 11 years, I was the inaugural head of what's called the Harvard Innovation Lab. And I'll spare you all the details on it, but in short, it was very much focused on nurturing the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Harvard. Harvard being within Boston, a much larger ecosystem. But part and parcel with my time there, like any good entrepreneur, I thought about the problems and challenges that I perceived facing this industry. And I actually fell in love, I guess, is professionally in love with a challenge that I believe is present in higher ed. It's an industry that's so foundational to so many of us and holds such promise for so many in this country for economic and social mobility, but also creating healthy cities economically. And also, I would argue, healthy entrepreneurial ecosystems. And this issue of the value proposition, for a real business term, for those of you who are more business-minded, that value proposition and where we may be in sync or out of sync as an industry got me very interested. In Boise State, both under our former president, Bob Custer, and our current president, Marlene Trump, I think he is very focused on thinking about how we can make sure we are relevant and trying to recognize we have an economic engine in the state that is on fire. And how do universities, whether it be Boise State or others, serve that need? So I got very interested in this college. Bob Custer has hired me as the founding dean, and we really think about, like any good entrepreneurial entity. In this case, I work within a large organization, but fundamentally, what are the challenges that are facing this industry? We have a fast-paced, very complex and growing in sophistication, the problems we're facing, and it requires the problem-solving techniques, I would argue, of the entrepreneur, the individual who can diagnose the problem, understand how to design solutions for which people will be interested in consuming your solutions. And so in our case, we believe that in higher ed, for an example, smart universities are going to be laser focused on having an answer to how they deliver access for all, retention, that we don't lose people on that journey, and then ultimately employment. There's only two outcomes that I believe as a university we stand for. One is you might continue on direct to grad school, The other is you want to step out and make a contribution to society, and often that is inextricably linked to employment. And for some small group, that's entrepreneurship. And so we do focus on all of those, Jay. But that's a quick version of how I got here, and why I love being here.
I like also, Gordon, that this notion that if you've got somebody that's maybe an engineer that also, or a software engineer or something like that, that you have this integration that you help bridge across multiple learning channels, right, within the university. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I think it all comes back to, again, there's a healthy dose of technology and entrepreneurship here on this cast. And my view is, the world is interdisciplinary, and yet often traditionally in higher ed, we've siloed out for students these very narrow tracks. So one theme we work on a number, is thinking about how we can contribute in my college, that broadening that can create the peripheral vision. So whether it be that engineer who's able to bring tremendous context to their problem solving techniques, or to that teacher who's thinking about, there's friction here in what I'm doing. Instead of taking it for granted, recognize it and think about how you might participate in the solution. And I can go on and on to what that broadening or peripheral vision that you just talked about is, it does for different roles and for people. But I'm a big believer that strength comes from knowing a very specific area, but also really having good aptitude for breadth too. The engineering community and broader communities call it a T-shaped individual.
I've had a chance to be able to spend some good quality time with President Marlene Trump, and I've got to tell you, I think she's wonderful. I'm sure that's going to help. She's got a very good entrepreneurial bent, trying to figure out the connections that need to continue to take place there. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
agree. I'd agree.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about you mentioned something that I think is kind of exciting. There's this rate and acceleration of change that's going to be taking place because of the change in innovation and technology, right? Because we've seen that, you've seen it clearly with mobility and Internet of Things. There's so many things that are happening, and now we've got the fourth industrial revolution that's going to be, that we're seeing this entrance into right now. What are your thoughts about what's going to be the things that we need to really, from a university standpoint and an industry standpoint, and the connections there? What do we need to really focus on?
Well, look, I mean, we're not the only industry facing rapid change, whether that be technology, adoption, evolution, transformation as people move to the cloud, mobility, but certainly globalization. I'm going to translate your question into just thinking about Idaho, because that's our ecosystem. There's employers, there's educators, there's public sector and private sector, and ultimately, I think we're in a fascinating time in my 6 years in Idaho, and what I expect to be a very long time in Idaho, raising my kids and investing in a world where we have a very special state built on a spirit of independence, self-reliance, self-determination. And at the same time, we also know the price of potatoes globally. We know the price of oil matters for how many students we may have paying tuition who come from overseas, or we are linked more than we maybe even realized in the past, but will be ever present for us. What's exciting to me, whether it be university to employer or just more generally here, is we are quickly aggregating talent in this current phase that I've been able to witness in Idaho, and I know we've had others in the past. Talent that's coming in that has skills that speak to the things we're talking about, the technology curve, the adoption. We're also seeing, with especially COVID accelerating, is remote location, the ability to be now in a place that everybody knows that has livability at scale, which is Idaho, and actually produce globally and nationally from a domiciled environment of Idaho. You don't have to live, in other words, where you work. And that's a real favorable trade wind if you believe in Idaho wanting to have self-determination, because we're going to have people who really are influencing how global world operates if we continue to aggregate that talent. And that ultimate vitality, bringing those people together, creates unstructured spontaneity and connectivity. And we have great relationships with each other in this state. So that theme to me applies to universities and employers, but
Mhm.
we've got the same issues: rapid adoption of technology, cost curves we have to manage, thinking about retention, broadening who we serve, and how adaptive our institutions are. So I think both of those need to be working where we talk to each other. And for employers, I would love to see them view the Idaho universities as truly contributing talent that can meet all levels of their organizations, from C-suite to entry level. We've got that capability. Don't put us in a box. But to universities, think about the challenge of, we've got to have graduates who are prepared to contribute to, whether it be a Micron factory in Taiwan, or thinking about how Albertsons is reinventing the retail experience to the food to farm to table environment. That requires global peripheral vision, although it's locally adapted here to Idaho. And so, long answer, but I get passionate, Jay. So I'm sorry, you got me going.
No, I think it's a good answer. So, since you've been here 6 years and you've been kind of looking at this whole ecosystem we have right now, one thing that you've seen is that COVID's accelerated a lot of things, like you've mentioned, Gordon. I mean, this remote learning, and also having people work virtually. And we found that a lot of people have said that, and most of these are people who hire new talent, but the people that are applying for a lot of the jobs that were maybe 5 years ago, they might have had a harder time finding it. There are a lot of people from outside the state that are applying for these jobs. So there's really a wealth of talent of people that are looking to come to these jobs, which is creating more opportunity here for us to accelerate our delivery system as far as generating the next generation of products and services. But if you take a look at all of this, and you've been here for 6 years, how do you think we're doing with respect to building this innovative ecosystem?
I mean, these are my words, and others with greater precision and expertise in aspects of what I'm touching on. I welcome their feedback or their contributions. But to me, we're in a phase for Idaho overall, where I believe this is a tectonic plate shift, where we're moving from, and I don't know the terminology, so I'm making this up. It's not judgmental, but tier one, instead of a tier one city, which I think of as these global cities, LA, San Fran, New York, that's not who we want to be, and that's not who we are. But I think as a capital and the ever globalization, we're clearly moving into an elevated, just a different place. When I think of the metropolitan Boise area, although I certainly include what Twin, Eastern Idaho, Idaho Falls, Pocatello, CDA, you get to the Lewiston. I mean, there's all a state that's productive and rapidly moving. I think if I'm hitting your question right, I think this idea of an entrepreneurial ecosystem or an enterprising ecosystem, it requires critical players. One, it requires congregating. I don't think the answer is, hey, solar technology, you go out to Caldwell, we're going to create a cluster over in Twin on only one thing. You do want cluster, but you don't want municipalities ideally fighting with each other, doing policy that's trying to steal employers necessarily. Think about our size and how we can create clusters. So I think clusters are good, but don't forget that proximity also creates additional synergy and heat that clusters of employers, having Micron near HP, near Albertsons, near Simplot, near Agribeef, you go down the list with a Cradle Point, with Account. You may not at first blush think those things represent a cluster, but I promise that kind of roughage where there are people meeting each other and talking creates 1 + 1 = 2.5 or more, at least in theory. Now it has to be executed, but I think we've got the right community for that. So more specifically, I think around entrepreneurship, I think it's a critical pillar for economic growth. So large employers have a maturation curve of hiring, and then they may, at least theoretically, they slough workers off. Those workers can think about reinventing. They have expertise. Universities are bringing up people today where technology and the gatekeepers for a number of industries, not all, have fallen away. You want to produce your own record, you want to write your own book, you can do that tomorrow. You can self-publish, you can put out a high quality available for mass purchase to a global market. You don't have to get EMI Records in Nashville to sign you in order to be known. That is opening up and unlocking the potential for tremendous democratized access to those that have solutions that people will pay for. So if I'm a musician now in Grangeville or an artist in Arco, you have opportunities, as long as there is an internet connection, and I know we're working on that, to step into global marketplaces like never before. We as universities offer the ability to close the gap, because that alone doesn't mean people are taking advantage of it. But we owe it to our communities to think about how we empower these amazing communities, from, you name it, McCall to St. Mary's to Salmon. You go down the list of beautiful places that I think have tremendous opportunity in addition to our bigger cities.
You know, Bob Locken mentioned that one time when we were having a discussion about that, about how important it was to be able to see adjacent industries, right? So you sit there and you say, well, let's see, I've got White Cloud Analytics that might be able to do some work over in the agriculture space or the food to table type thing, you know, where he's generally been looking at healthcare. So yeah, I think that's a great point, Gordon. Now, last week you guys had some, through the venture college there, you focus on this Idaho Entrepreneurial Challenge, which I think it was the 7th year, right? This year?
Yes, 7th year.
Tell us a little bit about that and why that's so important to have for, you know, Boise State and the citizens of the state of Idaho.
I mean, the Idaho Entrepreneurship Challenge to me is, it's really near and dear. It's something I'm very passionate about in sponsoring. I give all credit to the implementation of this to our venture college, which is downtown Boise, our executive director, Nick Miller, and a wonderful team, which sits on collaboration with a whole bunch of other people. And that's part of my answer here is the Idaho Entrepreneurship Challenge. What it is, it's an annual competition that invites participation from all students linked to universities based in Idaho. And we work with campus-based faculty who themselves are leading entrepreneurship, whether that be at Idaho State, University of Idaho, BYU Idaho, our community colleges, LCSC. You go down the list. And what we thought was, there's great work on each campus, but let's invite coming together and bringing our students together and nurturing this one leg of entrepreneurship with the community and expertise present in Idaho. And so we have over 100 applicants from these campuses when rolled up. We invite the 24 finalists scored by Idaho judges, experts from across industries who score these. We bring them to Boise, and there's a whole bunch of value. One is, yes, it's an annual competition. Students win prize money and mentoring and expertise. But at another level, it's ecosystem building. It's the fact that ITC and UJ, along with entrepreneurs in our community, established employers, leaders of those groups, participate as judges. They offer services as mentoring. They step in with, in some cases, financial support. And our university community comes together. That is the best of trying to bring productivity from all our assets to help these individuals who have the passion of a pro athlete. They want to grow their idea and see if they can do it here in Idaho. What we do for them is create community. Now students who are leading an initiative at Idaho State meet students from U of I, from Boise State, and we set up that partnership so that those individuals launching from college have that opportunity to step out with great resources. Because that's the hardest thing to get, I would argue, is advice, mentoring, and so forth. That looks, a whole bunch of people, I won't name them, because if I started naming them, I'd leave other people out. But it's the best of Idaho in the spirit of collaboration that makes this state so great.
You know, I've been a judge at it almost, I think, except for 1 year of this, Gordon, but
Yes.
it was exceptional. I think that, you know, sometimes people come up with ideas and you sit there and you watch it, and that idea might not go to, but they need to learn how to vet it, because they're gonna come up with a new idea. They're gonna be a new breed of entrepreneur that's gonna start coming up and doing other type of things. And interestingly, Gordon, this is fun. The Idaho Knowledge Report that we put out every year, and we have the 6 economic regions. What's come out of all these regions is the idea that they need to focus on entrepreneurship. So, and they need to have people taking risks that are starting new ideas and trying to figure out and having entrepreneurial type things, but entrepreneurial deals with companies to be able to solve their customers' problems, but more importantly, develop new products for their future opportunities. So,
yeah, I mean, I always say, Jay, if life is a chess game, we as a state, we as individuals know what piece you want to play. If you
Yeah.
don't, you're probably a pawn on somebody else's chessboard. And I think that knowledge report you're referencing is calling out the idea of, and it's a very Idaho thing in my 6 years here, is we want to be charting our own course. And I think
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is a very powerful vehicle to making the state, as we look forward 50 years and more, even more in a position to be as desirable and as wonderful as it's been in the last 120 years of its state existence.
Oh, we've had some, but I think you're so right. And that's where these folks on this are saying we need to have more entrepreneurship if we're going to, because that's kind of a gateway to be able to look at how strong your economy is. And in those areas, because if you don't have these earlier stage companies that are starting to percolate up, you won't have the mid-size. You certainly won't have them percolate to higher. So this is really fun for us. And I think the Idaho Entrepreneurial Challenge is pivotal, because as we look back from this 10 years from now, we're going to see some amazing companies that actually probably came, and students that have showed really good entrepreneurship that have been developed because of the Entrepreneurship Challenge. Don't you think?
That's one good point, Jay. And I don't know where we are on timing, but I would just say, for those people that are not active or thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs, you just brought up a great point. It is a decade or more long when it's planting seeds, but those seeds don't sprout in months. But we all know smart behavior is to plant the seeds for tomorrow. Not everything happens in days, weeks, or months. In some cases, smart strategic thinking is planting seeds that will take a decade. Often to tomorrow's amazing startup, it actually started a decade or more ago. In fact, it's more often the case. There's a great quote from an entrepreneur who once said, it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. And, and that what that means is you don't hear of these groups. Get to know there's a lot of people around this state doing things we don't know, or it's not on everybody's radar. But I promise there'll be an overnight success at some point.
Well, isn't it the fun thing is that all of the companies that are now doing exceptional things, Count, that was started early 2000s, Cradle Point, early 2000s, Clearwater Analytics, MWI Animal Health, truckstop.com. These were all entrepreneurs that started these great companies that have now been in existence now for 20 years, 21 years. And now they're getting a major lift of all the things. So it does take time and patience, but hard work and ingenuity. So,
and I'll give you one example. I think Trailhead is a great vision where the city of Boise has said, we get it. We get that these things you can't ask today, I'm going to do something, and a month from now, where's the product? How many jobs have you created in 30 days? That shorter term thinking, actually, I would argue is going to be actually harmful to Idaho if we, as a broad group, but the city of Boise, to me, in that one example, there's other innovative mayors and other cities where they said, let's make that investment and we'll bring private partnership in. This is not just public dole. It's got to earn its keep, but it also has the support of City Hall. It's a wonderful example of, I think, where there's been longer range thinking, where often our pressures are to think in short-term bites.
I think you're right, and that's something Brad Feld talks about when how they develop this whole in Boulder, is it really needs to have long vision, 15-year visions that are out there, so you really don't do knee-jerk reactions short term. So, Gordon, so I really appreciate the time here with what you've done, Nick Miller, people like Ed Zimmerman, people.
Ed Zimmer,
Ed Zimmer. I said Ed Zimmer have been great people that are really working on all of this. If there's as we leave, there was this one quote I was going to have as kind of I like having a quote that I kind of have reference on, and this was something that was brought up by Winston Churchill. So I'm going way back, right? Right after World War II, I say Winston Churchill said that some see private enterprise as predatory target to be shot, others as a cow to be milked, but few see it as a sturdy horse pulling the wagon. And I think that's what's going to help Idaho, is that we have this whole idea that we build it like you were talking about. And one of the goals we have is that Idaho would be the most innovative state in the union. I know like the Kauffman Institute has like 29 variables, all these type of things. Do you think that Idaho could be the most innovative state in the union?
I do. I think the attribute I often think about, though, is be distinctive. Sometimes an instinctual reaction is to look and it's a great way to at least create context. Look at what other people are doing. But when we look at what other people are doing through the lens of, well, I'm just gonna, let's do it like them, that's more risk averse behavior, as opposed to aggressively learn, be inquisitive. I want to know how other people are doing this. But now let's take all that we've learned rather than just take one example and just try to carbon copy it. And I think that comment applies to a broad set of your point about Idaho is, if we think about the areas we can win at and play in, longer term thinking, that's thinking differently. That's thinking with distinctiveness in mind. And I think we have the character as a state. I think we have a tendency to not be short-term thinkers. We want to be building for another generation. We want that example from the Winston Churchill quote to be a sturdy plow horse, a sturdy workhorse that can live for years producing, rather than, killing the golden goose, so to speak. The trade winds are our friend. We're aggregating the talent. We have a lot of things going for us in this current climate as people think about geography without boundaries and a lot of appeal. And so I'm personally thrilled to be here. I love working alongside UJ and ITC and all their work. I have one name I also want to bring in, because you mentioned Ed Zimmer, is Kevin Learned. He's been foundational in the work of Venture College, and I know he's part of a cohort who continues to bring productivity and has in the past decades. So lots of others, but I can't thank you enough. And again, it's a real privilege to be with you and living in this state, and I'm thrilled to be here.
It's great. And you're right, Kevin Learn's a great guy. Ed, I mean, all the people that but I'm going to say this part, Gordon, we are very fortunate to have what you're building, and the ITC stands there to help support all of the things you're doing with entrepreneurship and College of Innovation Design. Thanks for what you have brought so far to Idaho and what you're going to bring, because the way we see it is that Idaho's future is very bright because of things like the Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge and several other things. So thanks so much, Gordon, for all you're doing.
Thank you, Jay. We're putting our oar in the water, and thanks to ITC for all you're doing. Everything you do is right there with us. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Gordon Jones from Boise State and the College of Innovation Design for being part of Innovation Matters. We are hoping you're all finding ways to innovate and to transform, because in Idaho, innovation matters. Thanks so much. Have a great day.